Hello, hello, coders. God, start that again. Hello, coders. Hope you're doing well. It is episode 136 of the How to Code Well podcast. I am live, as I always am, on a Thursday evening around 8 o'clock-ish at this time. It's live, as you can probably tell. Today we're going to be talking about breaking changes in PHP 8 in the upcoming RFCs. Or a particular RFC, shall we say, the dynamic properties one. And also we've got a bit of news. I'm going to first dive into the changelog. And in this week's changelog, we've got a couple of things that I want to discuss. The first thing is that we have a new YouTube short. It's a new week, so we have a new YouTube short. That is the PHP 8 union types. I'll put a link in the show notes below to that. That's a 60-second clip teaching union data types in PHP 8. Going along the theme of still live streaming, you can watch me struggle trying to get the new PHP course series that we're doing. You can watch me struggle to get that to level 9 of PHP Stan. Again, a link in the show notes there as well. I did that on Tuesday, and I'm going to continue working on that course on the Tuesdays. I eventually got it to level 9. I didn't on the stream. However, I did do it afterwards, after the stream. Level 9 is very difficult. Very, very difficult to achieve. I've also started using the new GitHub projects beta. This is like a very interesting sort of way of project management, or a project management tool on GitHub. GitHub is becoming sort of a contender, I feel, for, say, Jira and Trello or other kind of tools that you might use. This beta allows you to have a sort of, I'm using at the moment like an overarching project in which I can link automatically issues from GitHub repositories scattered all over the organization of How to Code Well, which is fantastic. It means that I've now created like a recording project, and a course project and other projects that are kind of catch-all projects that require certain tweaks to certain repositories of the How to Code Well space. So that's pretty cool. I've started to look into, just going through the notes here. So I've started to look, a lot of people are going to roll their eyes at this. I've started to look into how the blockchain works, and how the technology behind it works. Things like what's the difference between proof of work, proof of stake, how we can use more of, look upon it more of a decentralized tool that we can use in the web space. Now, I would love to do a course or a tutorial on it next year. That's why I'm trying to get clued up on it. So far, I have just been doing it in my private time. That's not a lot. So I've done a lot of reading rather than a lot of coding, just to try and get myself used to the acronyms and used to how things work. I've been looking at all sorts of repositories that use like the blockchain for things like PHP and JavaScript, looking into the different frameworks. I'm thinking maybe the start of next year, if I progress down this, we might be doing some of this stuff on the live streams. Maybe, I don't know. We'll just see how it goes. So, excuse me. As I mentioned, I think was it last podcast. I'm interested in Web3. I'm interested in the technology. I'm not going to just dismiss it as a fad. I would like to learn more about it before I can give my ultimate opinion on it, if that makes sense. I think it's too early to say which side of the fence you're on. Anyway, or at least it's too early for me. Thank you, Pedro. Bitcoin, hooray. Well, the interesting thing I find with the whole Web3 thing, and I'm trying to use Web3 rather than crypto here, is that I do think that there are potential things outside of the financial space for Web3, and I would love to explore those areas. So I just want to see where the rabbit hole goes with all of that. So I try not to jump straight onto the crypto stuff. I'm not really interested in any of the financial stuff. It's fascinating. I'm not a financial guy. So I'm not really bothered by that. It's the technology. It's how to do things like proof of work, proof of stake. How does that compare to, say, the traditional REST requests? I'm interested. I just want to see where the knowledge can go on that. Also, I have, hooray, my new MacBook Pro. It's a M1 Max. It's here. If you can hear any whirring, it's because it's trying to do a backup to the NAS at the moment. So that's cool. I did think it was going to come next week, but I got a shipping notification this morning to say that it was due. So that's exciting. Although I haven't really played with it at all. I've literally just installed or took a Time Machine backup from another machine, and then just switched Time Machine backups, created a new one, and now I'm backing this one up to the NAS. So I haven't played with it. I did click on PHP Storm and then realized that the version of PHP Storm doesn't run on M1, doesn't run on Apple Silicon. So I've downloaded the latest one. So maybe after this stream, I'll have a little play and see. But so far, it's pretty good. In terms of like the screen and the speed of things, I'm noticing that it's interesting. I'm noticing a change, a difference. I'm already looking over at the old MacBook Pro, thinking, yeah, that's old tech now. Cool. So that's the changelog. There's a fair amount there, and coming up, we're going to continue down that course thing that I discussed. It's going to be the PHP login and logout course. We're going to continue that on the Tuesdays, and I want to tackle the PHP Stan level 9 on the howtocodewell.net and howtocodewell.fm sites, and I'll probably do that this Saturday. So that's coming up. So more pulling of my hair, I think, or well, that's why I've got no hair. Cool. So Oreo writes in, and Oreo has asked a question on one of my PHP tutorials, and the PHP tutorial in question is the how to randomize a PHP array. And Oreo asks a really good question here is, can you do this in a database? So can you do this outside of a programming language? So can you select random records in a database? You certainly can, and there's actually a function I'm going to pick on MySQL here. You certainly can, using the rand function. The rand function, or RAND, and then the parentheses, allows you to randomize your or generate a random range from whatever you give it. So you can pass in an argument, which is the seed, I think it is called the seed, and it spits out a decimal place from 0 to 1. So any kind of random number, floating point within that space. You can, of course, use a method. I think, racking my brain now, floor, I think, is the one that will round down the number. I believe it's down, and then seal is up. I think that's the right way. Anyway, there is a method in MySQL to do that, to round up, round down. So if you wanted to get an integer, you can do so. By default, it will return a decimal place. So you would do the flooring to return you an integer. And also, more specifically to your question, Oreo, you've asked about, can you select records randomly? You can, because what you can do is order by rand. So you can do your select query, and then on the order by statement, you can order by rand, which will then use that decimal place to return you a random result. However, one thing I would definitely mention here is that I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it through the database. What I would do is I would define your records, pull them back down into, say, PHP or whatever language you're using, put them into memory, and then randomize that in memory. So don't randomize it on the database. For various reasons, one being performance. If you're doing a lot of random database queries, or if you've got a website, high traffic website, and it's just bombarding random queries, or a query with randomness in it, then that can get quite troublesome on the old database performance. Thank you, Pedro. It is correct. Thank you. Floor down, seal up. Yeah, that makes sense. You're stood on the floor and you can look at the ceiling. So yeah, that does make sense. Okay, so I want to get into the PFC, the PHP RFC, the Dynamic Properties RFC. That is an RFC that's caused a little bit of controversy, a little bit of discussion, especially in the Twitter PHP sphere. And to be honest, to be completely and utterly brutally honest, I never actually knew this was a thing, like dynamic properties. I thought that was something that was, I know what dynamic properties are. So it's properties that you haven't quite defined, in your class, and you are defining them on the fly. They're dynamically defined. I thought that was removed a long time ago, because obviously that's not good. That's not good at all, because you're not adhering to the visibility scopes or the class signatures. It's not good practice. It can lead to all sorts of human error. It's not a good thing. But I thought that was removed a long time ago. But it hasn't. And this PHP RFC wants to remove it. It's going to deprecate it first and then remove it in PHP 9. So, and my initial thought was, yeah, that's great. That makes sense. But then I started reading comments from maintainers and other PHP developers, and they were mentioning the painful side of maintaining software, which I hadn't necessarily really understood. The thing is, I am a contractor, so I write PHP for money. I'm like a paid gun. I'll go to one project and upgrade that, go to another project and upgrade that. So to me, these changes are good, because it means that there's probably going to be more potential for me to upgrade a project in the future, which means that it's a financially good thing for me to do, to see that PHP is progressing in this fashion, because it means that this is something else that I'm going to have to do later on, in the next project. Let's say if they want to move whatever they're on at the moment to PHP 8, then they'll have to contend with that if this is a thing. So my business hat on, with my business hat on, this is actually a good thing. This is going to eventually, it's going to make me money, isn't it? Because it's going to be a requirement for someone to say, I want to move to PHP 5, 6, or PHP 7, all the way up to PHP 9, or whenever that happens, and I'm going to have to deal with these things. And that means it's going to take time. That means that, it's an invoice line item, right? At the end of the day, that's what it will be. It is painful. It is so taking off the business hat and putting on the developer's hat, it is painful. It's extremely painful, because, just by the very nature of the fact that the dynamic properties, it means that they could be anywhere. They could be absolutely anywhere. And I was actually reading a tweet from, I'm not going to name names, but there was a tweet that I read, and I had to read it twice because I thought it was just sort of a joke, to be honest. But there are PHP developers out there who use dynamic properties to this day because they know they can. They might not realize that they shouldn't be doing it, but they know they can, so they're going to do it because they know that they can get away with it. And either they haven't been taught the right way to do it, or either they haven't, or So yes, so there is a lot of code out there that does need to be changed. A lot of code out there that needs to be altered. As Pedro's mentioned, it will be obviously painful for for contractors, sure, but I do look upon that as a sort of, it's gonna end of the day, it's gonna be whatever your daily rate is. It's not a case of, as long as you're true to your estimates and you're true to yourself, it's going to take me this amount of time to do. As long as you can have tests and stuff, then it should be good. The point is, though, in my opinion, upgrading anything should be boring. It should be very boring. It should be an absolute just boring process. No drama. No drama. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be awesome? And the way to get that with these big changes happening is through testing. Without testing your code, or not, I shouldn't say your code, or testing the code that you're working on, because let's face it, we do a lot of legacy work. We work on a lot of legacy projects that we've been given, or, it's just landed on our lap, right? And so we weren't the original people to develop this code, and therefore we probably are looking at untested, unverified code. And at that time, we're probably going to have to deal with all of this, all of these deprecated issues, all these breaking changes. So that's when the pain happens. It's when you don't know what you're going to do. You don't know whether what you're going to do is going to break something or if it's going to be okay. And you don't have that level of confidence if you don't have testing. If you don't have testing, it is all risk. It is all risk. You don't even know what is working right now. Without any testing, you don't know what is working right now. So that would be the first thing that I would do, is look at the test case, look at the tests, look at the code coverage, and gauge a level of confidence from that. What's your code coverage? What are the things you're testing? Let's see how flaky your tests are. Also, using tools like static analysis, PHP stan, some checking for PHP code sniffing, or PHP mess detection. All of those things you can use. They're things that you can use to help improve your knowledge of the code base if you're new to the code base, but also to improve the code base. So one thing that we use, or one thing I use, is like I think it's the code sniffer, and it beautifies the code. So you can create your own code sort of standard, if you will. So everything that gets checked into, wherever the repository is, needs to adhere to these standards. Likewise, you can check for things like, PHP stan, as I mentioned, at certain levels, and you can make sure that any code that gets into the repository is of a certain quality and a certain standard. When you've got those things, and when you've got the unit tests and acceptance tests and all of that stuff, then it's not such a big deal to upgrade. And the reason why it's not such a big deal is that you'll immediately know what's broken. The danger of not having any tests is the fact that you don't know if anything works or not, and you don't know. So, all right, let me pedal back. So, testing tells you where something's gone wrong, why it's gone wrong, how it's gone wrong, and when it goes wrong, right? When does it go wrong? When the test breaks. Where does it go wrong? It's going to tell you on a line number. How it goes wrong, well, it's how you've created your test cases. Now, that's something I disagree with. Pedro's mentioned that the client does not care if it's PHP 7, 8... Oh, actually, sorry, I misread that. Yes, that is correct. No, you're perfectly right there. So the client, the end user, doesn't care. Neither does the end user, as in the general public, but also the I don't know, your project manager, I guess, the person who you're reporting to, who isn't a developer, let's say, they don't really care what version it's on. That's perfectly true, as long as as long as they know they're on the latest version or the most stable version. There are certain requirements for certain companies to, always be on the most secure, stable sort of long-term support type thing. If you're dealing with any kind of financial institutes, there are rules and regs in place in certain cases that say that you know, as soon as something comes out that, you know, there's a security risk, you need to jump on that. They do audits and stuff, you know. So there is a little bit of knowledge that those people will have because of the audits. But in terms of just getting something running, it doesn't really matter what version in terms of, you know, their views, in my opinion, at least. But from a developer's point of view, we want to be working on the most stable. We want to be working on the most secure. And a lot of the time, we want to be working on the latest, you know, the latest toys. But that isn't always the case, and especially not in the PHP world. The PHP world it's an interesting world to be in at the moment. Very interesting. It's the thing is, when PHP 5.6 came out, PHP 6, you know, the next major release after PHP 5, got skipped. It got skipped, and so when PHP 7 came out, there was this big gap between PHP 5 and PHP 7. Basically this hole in time. And I think, this is just, you know, my opinion, I think that a lot of projects were being built around that time by developers who didn't really look into testing. There wasn't the tools in play. There wasn't a huge adoption at the very early stages of PHP 5, at least, of things like Composer. And so we have a huge amount of legacy software out there because of this period in time where there was no real upgrade. And then when PHP 7 came along, it was like, right, let's do 7, let's do 7.1, let's do 7.2, let's do 7.3, let's do 7.4. Right, let's move on to 8. Let's do 8.1, 8.2. Okay, let's now talk about 9. And we're like, whoa, let's calm down here a minute. Let's just chill the boots. We have all of the legacy stuff that we need to deal with. So my take on this whole, you know, BC breaks thing is the fact that, A, you cannot move forward without having backwards breaking changes. In my opinion, you can't move forward. This dynamic properties thing. It might not be the most interesting of change. It's not a new feature, is it? It's not a new feature. It might not be the most exciting thing, but it needs to be removed for PHP to progress, in my opinion. Otherwise, we're just going to have this bloated programming language that can do all sorts of bad things. And this is basically tightening those bolts and making sure that it is doing the thing that we want properly, which is moving more into stricter types, object orientation. And let's face it, PHP was never that when it started. It was a templating engine. So we've gone from a templating engine to a very handy piece of object orientation kit, right? Well, you can't say 8 steps. It's now 7 because 6 didn't exist. So, you know, in not many jumps, in not many hops, we've progressed greatly. But in that period of time, we've obviously allowed bad practice. We've obviously allowed code smells happening, and we are trying to make it a better programming language for the next generation of PHP developers coming on. That really is the crux of my argument. It's the greater good. You know, getting rid of this helps the greater good. It might not help your project, the thing that you're maintaining right now, and it's going to cause a lot of pain going forward. But once that pain is down, it's done. Personally, I think that PHP is having too many release cycles. I think personally what needs to happen is, then I'm not a part of the PHP release process. I don't have a PHP.net account. I do not have voting rights. I've never created an RFC. So the things that I'm talking about today could be completely off the wall, just not a thing, not an issue. But what I have seen is that PHP, from PHP 7 to now, there's been so much churn of change. And I think we just need to slow our roll a little bit. And I think what we need to do is have more of a defined roadmap going forward and actually stagger things out a little better and have because the thing is, the danger is you don't want people to vote things off, to say, no, I don't want this just because they're coming in quickly. You want, the vote of this looks like it's going to go in the favor of this is going to be removed, which in my opinion is good for the greater good, obviously. But the danger is when the next one comes out, if it comes out really soon, then the risk is that people will go, no, I don't want that. I don't want that because it's too soon. That breaking change happened too close to the last breaking change. So I think for breaking changes at the very least, there should be more of a staggered approach. One idea I had potentially was, and this is just an off-the-wall idea I had, is to go from 8 to 8.5, and then in those point releases, again, I don't know how PHP is released, so this could be completely off. This is completely wrong what I'm saying. But you could say, well, for each one of those point releases to 0.5 to the middle, you're allowed to have, I don't know, X amount of breaking changes going in, and then everything from, say, 8.5 to 9, you're not allowed to have any breaking changes going in, and that needs to be a defined period of time where maintainers and coders can actually adjust to the breaking changes that have been proposed from 8.0 to 8.5. That may already be in place. Again, I don't know. I have no idea. But I would like to, wouldn't it be awesome if there was an actual roadmap where we could say, right, this is going to take this long to get to 9. We're going to extend it a little bit to give you a bit more breathing room. And that is going to be a fixed period of time for each major version going forward. Sometimes I could be completely wrong here, and this could be, just down to me not reading the news as often as I should, but sometimes it does feel like PHP evolves whenever it needs to evolve, rather than evolve over a given period of time. For example, with Symfony, you have a defined roadmap. You can see a timeline. I haven't seen any of that with PHP, with PHP. And I think that would be very handy for maintainers. And I think if they had the knowledge that only a certain amount of breaking changes were going in per release cycle, then that would be beneficial. I think what we need to do as PHP developers, or just developers in general, is listen to the maintainers. They are maintaining open source code that we rely on all of the time. They are burnt out. And it's not fair. We cannot demand that our maintainers just upgrade all of the time. There needs to be a level of empathy. We need to talk to them, and we need to find out what their problems are. And if there is a way of solving it, which kind of helps the greater good going forward, then I would be interested to have a discussion with someone who has views on that. Maybe over a pint or something. But for those that aren't maintaining code, though, as in not maintaining an open source project, a project that is relied on by hundreds of thousands of people, let's say, for those people like me who are just contractors or developers working in a company, and all they're worried about is the code that they write for the company, then I would say that right now is a time where you really need to write some tests. Really need to write some tests going forward, because it's just going to get more and more painful. And you need to know why these breaking changes are being removed. Yeah, Pedro mentions, like with Linux releases, Red Hat does that really good, for example. Yeah, Yeah, I don't really know what their release cycles are, but I know with the frameworks at least, it's very transparent. You kind of know where you are. You kind of know where the LTSs are. You know, you've got a good roadmap, a good changelog to read, and a good upgrade, plan going forward. Maybe this will all change, or eventually gradually change when PHP, the bugs at least, go onto GitHub, because then it's more of a transparent thing. At the moment, the bugs.php.net, that's quite an awkward thing to use. I wouldn't mind myself getting more involved with the PHP community from a technical standpoint, although I mean, I have tried to compile PHP before and it failed. I wouldn't mind trying that again. That would be an interesting thing to do on stream. And seeing if we can build our own extensions. That would be awesome, wouldn't it? But I take my hat off to anybody who does that stuff. It's really, to me, it's like a completely different, a different league, a different league of developer. But I was pretty much just sitting back and reading the tweets and listening, and I think that is something that we just need to do. We just need to listen to these maintainers. PHP is something that we love to bits, and we don't want to ruin it. And I think that there is an argument that if we were to rush into these breaking changes, even if they are for the greater good, we're going to ruin PHP because of the fact that we're rushing into it. And I do think it boils down to time, giving people enough time, and also the transparency of when things are going to happen. I think that's pretty good. And it's not just PHP 9. It's like, what's after that? That's, where is PHP going to be in, say, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years time? That would be an interesting conversation to have with someone. So that's my take on the PHP RFC dynamic properties. I know it's a little bit all over the place, my take, but basically it's just to listen and to appreciate where the maintainers are coming from. But also, I do feel that we cannot improve PHP without breaking PHP, unfortunately, because it's just the way that it's evolved. We're moving away from a templating engine to an object-oriented programming language. There's going to be pain. There's going to be pain. Anyway, thank you ever so much for watching, and thank you for your comments and insights. Hello, Martin. I'm sorry I didn't say hey to you. And Callie, thank you very much for joining. I appreciate that. Next time I'm going to be live on YouTube, at least, will be next Tuesday. We're going to be tackling the new PHP course, and we're going to be using some PHP unit. We're going to write some tests for that, and but the next time I will be on Saturday on Twitch, twitch.tv/howtocodewell, and we're going to be trying to level up howtocodewell.fm and howtocodewell.net to PHP Stan level 9, and I'm a little bit terrified because that's hard work. If you want to see me getting angry at code, take a look at my previous stream, my Tuesday stream. Thank you ever so much for watching. Happy coding, everyone, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers. Bye.